Hello, listeners. I just wanted to talk to you voice to ear and just kind of share a little bit about how my journey's been in the last year. Just real quick, I did take a hiatus from the Hollywood Actor podcast just because so much was going on, obviously, the coronavirus, and that was shifting our mental health, our industry, obviously, that shut down and has been trying to come back, and then another wave hit the industry, hit the world. We'd have to shut down. Commercials were staggering in and out. SAG writing papers. I mean, it was just a mess. And I thought during all that I didn't know and wasn't talking to people that did know how to move forward for quite some time. And it's only been recently, in the last few months, that I've felt comfortable and hopeful, honestly, about the industry, about my career, about moving forward and finding a footing and pushing through, wearing masks, testing up again and again and again to be on these sets, to continue my career, to continue talking to people in the industry, feeling comfortable talking about acting again. So here we are. It's February 2021, and I'm really excited about talking to new Hollywood actors again. People that have learned a lot in this past year personally and have been able to deal with mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and professionally this pandemic. Moving forward, pushing through. I've started to talk to a number of actors that have been doing these really unique projects, finding their way, or completely creating their projects from scratch. There's a myriad of these different paths that are extremely unique during these sets of circumstances, but are extremely vital and now are motivational and encouraging and are bringing hope to other actors as we see the light at the end of this tunnel. And on that note, I myself have been offered a few of these extremely unique opportunities in the last few months, including a Bud Light Seltzer Lemonade commercial that played at the Super Bowl yesterday. Hopefully that'll draw more eyeballs to the Hollywood Actor podcast. I'll be able to speak to more eclectic actors across the world about the types of projects they're being able to involve themselves in, the types of projects they're able to build from the ground up in the safety or compliance of their own hometown, or on location in some desolate or extremely hygienic location. It's exciting, is what I'm trying to get at. It's hopeful. And it's something that I feel not just comfortable, but I am beginning to, again, vibrate with this passion that I want to help connect and bring to the guests I speak with and you, the listener, the audience, the people that have been reaching out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, that have been texting, that have been calling. And as a side note, that is so unbelievably important for people to be doing right now. It's the only way we can connect is digitally, so please do it. Please send a quick text to a friend. Please pick up the phone and speak with your mom. Please do it. It means the absolute world, and it can mean the difference between someone having a bad day and someone turning their life around, someone seeing this light at the end of the tunnel. And it's a real light. It's there. It's 2021, and I am so excited. So, please enjoy this next episode of the Hollywood Actor Podcast. Thank you if you're a first-time listener, and thank you if you're a returning listener, guest. Your continued support, your presence, and activism within the actor community is essential, is vital. You are a frontline worker against the pandemic, against the virus that is desperation, that is loneliness, that is abandonment. You are the bastion of light for your friends, for your community. So shine bright. Shine bright.
And it was just such a seamless transition because it helped me realize this is just like indie film. Again, to go back to that basketball metaphor, every like motivational, good, feel good, like college hoop story is always about like the little college team who plays on their tiny court, and then they make it into March Madness, and they step out on that big court, and they all get intimidated, and or in the big stadium where there's 50 million more seats, and the coach always goes out there and like measures the court, and then gives them some speech about, guess what? It's still X amount of feet from baseline to baseline, from free throw line to free throw line. Like it's the exact same playing field. It's just change a little bit around you. And that was definitely my moment there where I kind of was able to get my feet under me and realize I can do this. Yeah, it's bigger scale, but it's no different than indie film at its heart.
If you're a professional actor challenged by an increasingly fragmented industry, then this podcast is for you. The Hollywood Actor Podcast is an anthology made up of the stories of actors building their bodies of work by redefining themselves, reframing their goals, and reevaluating their opportunities. No matter where we are in our career, we're always looking to be inspired and to share ourselves across our community. This podcast offers that opportunity to guests and to listeners alike as we all discover what it means to be a working, professional, successful actor. This is Jamie Young, and you're listening to the Hollywood Actor Podcast. Today's guest is Chris Bylsma. Chris is an actor whose work has taken him from Kansas to Kansas City to New Mexico and Hollywood. His credits include the Netflix miniseries Godless, the Netflix film El Camino, a Breaking Bad story, and the Paul Greengrass film News of the World starring Tom Hanks, currently playing in cinemas and available on numerous on-demand platforms including Vudu and Google Play. And now please welcome Hollywood actor Chris Bylsma.
I grew up in the gigantic, sprawling capital city of Topeka, Kansas, and loved it there. A lot of relationships that I still have today there, from obviously my family, but also my oldest friends that I've had for over 20 years now, which is really, really valuable. I never really did anything acting related, though. I never did any plays growing up or anything like that. It really wasn't until, I would say, late high school and after graduating from it, that I started to kind of get more into movies and films and start thinking about that. I guess what really opened my eyes was when Fellowship of the Ring came out back in 2000, I think it was. Huge fan of the books. And I didn't watch too many movies at that point, really. Like, we had the movies we watched as a family, of course. But when I first sat in the theater and saw that film, my mind was just literally blown. I was like, so this is what movies can be, It was
just the sheer excitement of seeing something like that come to life.
Yeah, and something on, with that epic of proportions, and something that I had that much of a connection to, and then to see what they could do as far as bringing that from book to screen. And I was just like, wow, this really is a magical medium if it's done correctly, And then when the special features came out, I of course grabbed the extended version, and
right? You can exactly. Extended.
And that's all I do now. Yeah, for sure. Only extended. But I saw all the special features too. And I was like, okay, well, I'm all about more Lord of the Rings while I wait for Two Towers to come out. And so I started watching through those, and just, that kind of opened my eyes to the actual filmmaking side of it. What the crew goes through, the whole, collaborative nature of it. And it was just amazing to me. I watched it many times when I was much younger, and just kind of, it really was like my film school crash course there. And then I just kind of, you mentioned earlier, I just kind of put it out of my mind because I thought, well, this looks really interesting to me. I'm in Kansas, and that happens in LA or New York, and I have no interest in moving there. So I just never really thought of it until later on.
What made you start thinking that this whole world of entertainment was something that you could become involved in, that you could make not just like a professional splash in, but could be something that would help to pay the bills?
That's a great question. It kind of got sparked when I was I had one of my oldest relationships. Like her family was very, very into movies, which was kind of the opposite of mine. And at first I just thought, well, this is interesting and, a fun way to spend time as a family. But the more I kept watching them with them, the more I was really getting into it and noticing the acting side of things and getting kind of excited about that possibility. And then, I came across an independent film casting call in Kansas City. And I thought, independent film, I don't even know what this is,
Yeah.
But I know it's a potential to maybe act in Kansas City. So I reached out and got scheduled for an audition. And I still remember I was standing in the break room of my 9 to 5 at the time. And I just called the director on my break and basically tried to back out. I didn't take a lot of chances at that point in my life. I was pretty comfortable with what I was doing. And I just kind of told him, hey man, I'm sure you've got tons of people with experience. I have none, let me just back out and save you the waste of time. And my friend Rich, to his credits, wouldn't let me basically. He said, you've already got it scheduled. Why don't you just come? And then, if you don't like it or you're not the right fit, then okay, but let's at least give it a shot. So I really, have to thank Rich more than anybody, because without him, who knows what would have ever happened, but for sure. And we reconnected recently and talked a lot about those old days, which I loved. The short version would be I ended up getting a small role in that film that I auditioned for. And just from the first day on set, it was a classic independent film. Long day on set. We're all wearing multiple hats, but just like being on set, doing it and actually getting to act, immediately I just knew, oh, wow, this is potentially not just like a new interest or a hobby, but this might be, what people refer to as a passion. And it didn't take long then, I'd say about a year and a half, I guess, of doing that on weekends before I finally realized, I'm starting to get more acting opportunities in Kansas City. I have connections with some crew out there, and I work crew some of the time as well, to where I know that I can have money coming in working in the industry, even if I'm not, booking a ton of Hollywood films as an actor. And so at that point, I just knew, hey, there's a possibility that if I work cast and crew, I can make a living in Kansas City at least, and to think about it. And at that point, I just knew, okay, well, I have to put in my 2 weeks at this job. Then I have to go try that. So,
were you commuting? Or what was the point where you relocated to Kansas City?
Yeah, up until that point, for that first year and a half or maybe even longer, I guess it was about 3 years off and on. I had my 9 to 5, sometimes overtime, and then drive an hour to hour 45 minutes out to Kansas City on the weekends and work, Friday night through Sunday morning, a lot of times on films out there, just trying to get connected with the industry and get plugged in, and then come back and do it all over again. So at a certain point, it was like a string of 80-hour weeks. And I was just it came to the realization that this is probably not sustainable. So I'm either going to have to do the smart thing and just kind of accept that this is just a hobby I can do on the side, or resign my job and move. And so I did the latter,
Yeah. But it was from that little jump, and then you had to make that bigger jump later. That reminds me of, I've told the story on the podcast about myself at Queen Mary, University of London, and going from studying engineering to eventually studying drama there, and realizing that those were my people. And a lot of those students went on to academia or, various different pursuits. But I was interested in going a little bit more mainstream and seeing if there was a drama school that could prepare me for Hollywood, for, professional TV and film work. And so I was auditioning for drama schools. And then I get that call that the Stella Adler Studio of Acting, they wanted to bring me in, and I'm just on the phone and I'm like, really? Are you sure? Yeah. And you were like, yeah, don't question it. And I'm like,
right, okay. Don't talk your way out of it.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And that bringing me in, forcing me into that conservatory approach, and not looking back and finding that way to make things happen. When I was in New York, I was again, like you were, commuting and just trying to make it work, because New York was super expensive. I bet Kansas City from Topeka was maybe much more of a bigger city experience for yourself as well, right?
Yeah, it was a bit of a jump. Certainly nothing like LA or New York, though. But that was part of the reason why I wanted to do it also, because Topeka, I love Topeka. But it's not like some gigantic city, big city experience. And I knew, okay, if LA or New York is potentially in my future, I can first test out what it's like, number one, to only pay the bills with acting and crew work. And number two, I can kind of like step into a little bit of a bigger city vibe and see what I really feel about it before I would potentially, just, I guess, pull up all my roots and move to a huge situation like LA or New York. But
well, and there were a couple of calls, and then you started realizing that there was a vibrant indie film and commercial scene in Kansas City.
Yeah, and like I said, back when I first came across that first audition notice, I had no idea there was anything going on, but that was only because of my own ignorance, Sure. There were a lot of directors there who were doing really great work, and yeah, it was mostly indie film work and a lot of great commercial work. And there was a bit there where there were tax incentives in Missouri that incentivized productions to come in. Not
really.
Yeah. It wasn't like top 5 city or anything like that as far as the incentives went, but like Up in the Air, the George Clooney and I think Vera Farmiga film, filmed a bit in St. Louis, and that was Oscar nominated. Winter's Bone, which is kind of what put Jennifer Lawrence on the map, that filmed entirely in Missouri and was Oscar nominated. That was right around 2010 and 2011, and then I moved there in 2012, and it was just before I moved there that they unfortunately axed the incentives, which that doesn't hurt the commercial or the independent world, but it does hurt a market's ability to bring films in. But we just concentrate on doing great work, and now the incentives are actually back on the right track.
Are they really?
Yeah. Steph, the film commissioner there, has done an amazing job working with everybody to bring back some incentives. And I know they filmed several of the last seasons for Queer Eye for the Straight Guy there. And it's just cool to see it to start to get building back up again, because I would love to see, there's so many talented crew members and cast members in Kansas City that I would love to just see them get armed with the financial backing that they need to bring in bigger projects as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's an amazing place. It was for me to learn and get connected, and so many people taught me so much on both sides of the camera.
Yeah, well, that's a great transition to learning what those first positions were when you were starting to do crew on these independent films and probably commercials where certain people have these very specific roles that are maybe even union workers that have come from out of state or are used to union work. Was it starting to give you a really clear idea of what it was like to be an actor on a professional working set?
I think I would definitely agree with that. I know in the beginning, working with my friend Rich, we did a handful of projects, maybe even 10 if you wrap in like all the 48-hour films and things like that we did as well. And we hit it off so well right from the beginning, and he was trying to do so much that he was like, hey, can you help me produce? And not because I could bring such valuable things to the table for him, but he knew that I was brand new, so I hadn't learned, I can't remember exactly his phrase for it, but it was something along the lines of, I'm glad that you haven't, you don't know very much, because that means I don't have to reteach it to you. Because a lot of times you
have bad habits, right?
Exactly. You don't have to break the bad habits. And so he taught me so much about the producing side and what it's like to, even schedule out call sheets and try to plan days and the equipment rentals and hiring crew and everything. And I even, helped him run sound here and there. I was never an expert at it, but I just got to do so many different things on that side of it. And the more I did that, the more I got into producing other people's indie films, or even, doing my own, telling the stories that I wanted to tell and was interested in. And I segued that into directing as well. A few projects in the indie film level. It was never something that at the time I really wanted to put myself out there and say, hey, I'm some big shot director, but I really was fascinated with that side of things. So I was really grateful for that. And then, of course, like on commercials or on reality TV shows that would come in or whatever, it was much more like, hey, I'm comfortable telling you guys that I can be a production assistant because I can. And I have a lot more, experience as far as, second AC, I can run a slate, I can do things like that. But you're right. When you're in these more official sets and regimented productions, that's not the time to be like, oh yeah, I can go ahead and set up those lights for you. Like if you're really not comfortable doing that. So I would just straight up telling people, I don't really want to mess with the gear. Like I'll pull stuff off the truck for you, but that's not my forte. And I'm not trying to like put myself out there as a cinematographer because I don't have the years and hours necessary to dedicate to specializing in that. But it was cool a good friend of mine that I made also on a 40-hour film in Kansas City. His name is Brian Reese. And he's a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force now, but he'd also worked on some big sets in Albuquerque, like Transformers and Terminator 4 and things like that, as military consultants and things like that nature. And when we first met him, of course, we were all very interested in the stories from the big sets. You know, what's it like to have an actual crafty food truck? You know, like, can you really order an omelet for breakfast and they'll just make it for you? Like, he would tell us these stories, and we know, with our, of course, like Cheez-It bags and trays of soggy Jimmy John subs, we're just like, oh, I can't even imagine this life exists. But it was great to kind of hear from his perspective too, that I guess the difference between sets, you know, there's certainly nothing wrong with indie filmmaking. I love it, and I still do as many indies as I can, but it was just cool to see that there are other opportunities in different worlds out there within this awesome industry of ours.
Yeah, very well said. I think there's so many different things that you learn from the independent film world, like you were saying about how you can pick up lights and say, "Can I help you? I don't really know what I'm doing, but I have these hands, and we need to get this on the road." Mm-hmm. There's certain things that an indie film needs desperately at times, especially like a 48 film project. Time is of the essence, and there's people that you were depending on that didn't show up because it's a 48-hour film project.
Right, like the entire crew, maybe. Who knows?
Yeah, right. I've definitely been on those short films, non-union short films, where you show up and half the crew's not there because it was an unpaid short film.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to kind of lend your hand, and you learn very quickly about what you can do, what you can't do, what the possibilities and opportunities are. And so there's that whole world of indie filmmaking, which I love. It's so vibrant.
Yeah.
It gives you that hands-on thing and allows you to tell these very unique personal stories. And then there's the opposite end, these union bigger productions where you definitely learn your place. Mm-hmm. and how you can start plugging into the industry. And I've continued to pursue that path. As much as I love indie films, I love kind of knowing what my place is, what my skill sets are, what my strengths are. Mm. And so when you're going into some of these commercials and you're learning, like, I'm a good PA, I'm learning a little bit more about the camera, mm-hmm. I'm learning about slates. Were you seeing some of these actors that would come on set and who wouldn't know, where their lighting was, where their mark was, how to stay in focus, that sort of thing that you were beginning to pick up?
Yes, absolutely. That's a really great point. And that's just one of the reasons why I'm so grateful for my background in crew work. Now, of course, I have friends who do crew for a living, and I would never put myself even on anywhere near their level, but I certainly got many hours of experience in just getting to kind of see the technicalities of how a set works, instead of, oh, I want to get into acting, and then I get kind of thrust into a position that I'm not really ready for. And I still see it almost on every set, where I'll see an actor who is not able to hit their marks for focus, who doesn't know kind of how to find their light or stay in their light if somebody else is kind of moving in and casting a shadow on them. Certainly actors who just have no concept of continuity and the importance of it, which that's a tough one, because I understand we all have our methods and we don't want a bunch of technical stuff in our own heads. But at the same time, that's just part of the job. Like, you have to be able to do these things and still engage in your method. Otherwise, you're making everybody else's life more difficult on set. But yeah, that's something that I'm very grateful to my crew background for. I feel like it made me a very technical actor, and that's definitely my goal now. Like, I still try to study as much as I can, whether it's about, the depth of field on certain lenses or whatever I can, making sure that I know as many of the terms as possible for what the shot size is. That way, if you see somebody setting up on like a big set where they're not really talking to you too much, because you're obviously not the lead, but you can kind of quickly grab the eye of a cameraman and just say, hey, is this, about a cowboy as far as a medium shot goes? Then number one, he can just answer you right away. He doesn't have to like figure out, oh, what are you asking exactly? And then you immediately know what your frame is, how much you can move and everything. But number two, it's not about marking your territory on a set, but that also does kind of like lend a little bit of credence to you, because they're thinking, oh yeah, this is just a co-star who can give us a line, we hope. And if you start like using these terms that you've learned because you spent so much time studying film or being on set, then they understand, okay, well, this is somebody who's experienced and who knows a little bit about my job too. And I think that just, makes it invaluable. And they don't think of us as the quote unquote stereotypical actor anymore then.
Right. No, you know your place, but you're understanding the context and the world of what they're trying to build.
Yeah, for sure.
Were you learning some of the technical aspects of acting alongside some of the artistic pursuits of acting within a certain studio, or a coach maybe that was from Kansas City or passing through town?
So for me, it was almost all self-study, because that's always how I've learned the best in everything I've done. And obviously, that doesn't mean you just like try and figure things out on your own, but that's learning from other people. That's asking questions with people who know more than me. That's, I can study every single day online. And for me, it was a lot of studying, what I could of the different acting methods of, whether it's Adler or Stanislavski or, Chubbuck or whatever, just studying as much as possible and kind of taking little pieces here and there. Okay, yeah, I really like that. Oh, this doesn't work quite as well for me, but that's okay. I'm not trying to specialize in just one method for me personally,
Yeah.
And then just some trial and error on sets too, simple things like learning very quickly that, hey, I prefer to mostly stay in character. Like, I'm not a full method actor by any means, but I can like turn it off and on. Yeah, I can do a very emotional scene. And then as soon as we cut, I can start joking with the crew and everything else. And sometimes that's more fun, but that's not the way I prefer to be. If there's a very emotional scene, or if my character has an accent or is different than me, I prefer to just stay in it the entire time, because I don't want to do some 90% really good performance that I put on when I can actually make it 100% if I just stay more focused and more in character. But yeah, so for me, it was always kind of just self-study and, of course, learning from others. There were great teachers in Kansas City who do good work, but I also kind of knew I may be going elsewhere and there may be different market standards for certain things. And so I just kind of waited on that.
That's an excellent, because, there's so many different schools and there's so many different disciples, and then there's so many different preferences that you can. Throughout my career, I've learned that you definitely can do things that somebody doesn't like, and if you treat anything like a rule, especially in an audition setting, it does seem to potentially backfire the next audition you get with a different casting director in a different market.
Right? Yeah.
Everybody has their own very personal preferences. Have you going forth in your career, when you do see some of these different acting coaches or classes that are workshops being offered, do you ever look into them or drop in or take any advice from any of these? Or are you really trying to hone in on your own personal, unique actor technique?
Oh, man, that's a really great question. For me, and this may change because I always try to stay open to other people's opinions. And of course, I know that I don't know and will never know everything. But for me, I kind of have found something that I think works very well. And I do want to continue to hone and advance that and get better in it, of course, and improve. But I have to admit that I am a little bit leery of something else messing with what's working a little bit, I guess I'm kind of like a basketball player who's like, my form is probably a little unique. Reggie Miller had one of the most unique, you would say, shooting forms ever, but one of the best shooters of all time. And that's my goal. I'm certainly nowhere close to that right now, but my goal is to be one of the best of all time, whatever that looks like for me personally. And somebody could come in and tell me, well, this isn't quite how it's typically done, but if it's already working for me, I'm not sure that that's input that I want, to entertain, and possibly, to keep with that basketball analogy. I don't know that I want to change up my form and then find out I can't shoot this way, but I will say that I do I try to pretty regularly take workshops with casting directors, because that's a whole different side of the camera. And like you said, many of them have many different preferences. And so it's very hard to just Google and learn, every casting director wants this. That's just not really true. And there's so much that their untold years of experience can help us with, and they can really lend us a lot of valuable information that way, I think. Obviously, you don't want to pay to play or do anything else, and you need to vet the casting director's work and all these things, because there are, hundreds of thousands of them that could be offering something. But that's a case where I really think yeah, there's an informational benefit, and then it's also smart business. It's not pay to play, but it is smart business to get yourself in front of them. And if you're doing a monologue with them or whatever, then they can see your work, and you can maybe cut some years off your journey that way too.
The basketball metaphor, but you're not changing up the way you throw, but you're still playing a game every now and again, even if it's not a paid game.
Yeah. Exactly. And, actors talk a lot about how important it is to stay sharp, exactly what you were talking about there. And we can work on our own audition, like taping ourselves doing a video audition every day of our life if we want. And that is good and there's value to it. But if you have that opportunity to do that same kind of like iron sharpening, I guess, but do it in a setting with the casting director and the investment is reasonable and everything else, then it just makes good business sense to do that,
Yeah. So you're talking about that friend that you were working with that had those experiences in Albuquerque. Was that the first time that Albuquerque was starting to be on your radar, or Los Angeles potentially moving to an even larger market?
Yeah, it really was. And again, I credit Rich with even getting me into the business, and I credit Brian with kind of expanding my horizons, because I was having the time of my life in Kansas City, and I continued to for several more years. But it wasn't until he started kind of talking about his experiences on those sets where I started thinking, that would be a lot of fun as well, to be involved with things that are on that quote unquote Lord of the Rings stage, like when I first had my eyes open to this, and certainly I had never heard of the New Mexico market at the time, just because, again, my own ignorance, I didn't know that much about other markets. It was already going pretty strong. And that was before the incentives were taken away and things dialed back for a bit, and then they were brought back and it's ramped back up again. But when he mentioned that, I was like, really? They do things in New Mexico? And the funny thing is, just like a quick little note to any actor that's listening, I still have people all the time who ask me, oh, why'd you move to Albuquerque? Which tells me that, I learned about this in 2011, 2012, something around that time. I didn't know at the time. That's perfectly fine. You don't know what you don't know. But it's been this way for over a decade now. And it's kind of like, hey, if you're thinking of possibly moving, research. Just do your own research and Google and ask some questions, because there's kind of no reason for us to still be surprised by the fact that Atlanta is huge, New Mexico is big, New Orleans and North Carolina and Chicago and all these places have things going on. You don't have to only limit yourself to LA or New York and then be shocked years later when you find out, oh, I could have gone somewhere else too. This is information that's readily available to us,
Especially if you're a crew member, I think. You're always working if you're in New Mexico or Georgia.
For sure.
People move from Los Angeles to Georgia and they're just constantly working.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you can do that in Kansas City too. I have plenty of friends who make a living doing crew work just because, I'll use, for example, Queer Eye for the Straight Guy, that film there now. That's a reality TV show. There are no roles for actors, though, because it's reality. However, it can employ crew members for, I don't know how long, 3 months, probably, if not longer, depending on how many seasons they shot there. So, when you're crew, there are different considerations and you kind of look at things with a different measuring stick. And, I know, I see people all the time in New Mexico I've seen one particular guy who's an AC. I'm like, man, I've seen you on 8 different sets now, at least. I can't even remember which ones, but he's just everywhere,
Obviously you weren't commuting from Kansas City to Albuquerque, but did you relocate for an audition, or once you'd booked a few roles, did you relocate to Albuquerque?
So that's a very unique story, and I'll try to give you the condensed version, which I'm not always great at doing, I know, but, I kind of reached a point in Kansas City where, like I said, was having the time of my life, had a lot of friends there that I had really great relationships with and felt very close to. And I just loved what I was doing. But at the same time, as an actor, first and foremost, I knew, number one, this is going to be very difficult to continue to make a living here and get by and have this be sustainable, because I'm not interested in having a 9-to-5 to make ends meet. And that's right for some people. It is not right for me.
And this is you realizing that you want to be more of an actor than working crew.
Right. And I also, over the years, when I first started out, I was like, oh man, if I could just be a PA on sets for the rest of my life, even if it's in LA, I would be happy. And that is, very valuable work and a huge part of a production. But for me, I just begin to realize my creativity is best utilized and my passion is most ignited by being much closer to what's actually going on set, and usually as an actor. And towards my time at the end of my time in Kansas City, I felt like I kind of accomplished a lot of what I could while I was there. And there was still much more that I could do. Of course, you can always grow, but I worked on so much as an actor, and I directed my own things and produced and directed a little for others, and gotten a lot of, films into the film festivals there. And I just felt like there's only so much further I can go. And also I begin to realize if I'm going to be able to make a sustainable living, I'm going to have to work more on the crew side. But just looking at my own work, I just directed something that I was in, and I realized my skills have atrophied as an actor because I haven't been fully focused on them. If I'm brutally honest with myself, that's the truth, And so I just had this come to Jesus moment, like you said earlier, where I had to sit myself down and say, okay, do you want to be pretty good at a lot of things and enjoy wearing a lot of hats in this industry and being kind of a Swiss Army knife? Or do you want to be a really great actor? And in the end, I had to be honest that my goal was and has always been, I want to be the best possible actor I can be.
That's a big question I think every actor needs to sit down with themselves and answer.
Yeah, and because there's nothing wrong with either answer. I loved wearing all those different hats, and I still produce from time to time, very, very, very rarely, and only on specific projects that I really feel are stories I need to tell. And I would like to direct, at some point again, and on bigger stages. Jason Bateman directing Ozarks, and all this awesome work Regina King with the directing that she's getting into, but right now, I knew that it was important for me to refocus on acting. And for me, I thought that meant, okay, well, then I need to move to a market where I can work on, get involved in episodic storytelling, which I love so much, and work on some bigger sets that will not only, of course, pay more because it is a business in the end, but will help to further my career and everything. And so I was looking at different markets that I could possibly move to. And at first my thought was, well, I could just get repped in those markets, stay in Kansas City where I love it, and then I can just commute when I need to. But kind of to an agency, the ones I submitted to, they all said, hey, we would be interested in repping you, but you have to move here. And at that point, I actually sat down to catch up with an old friend from high school, Riley, and he kind of told me, hey, by the way, I'm moving to New Mexico for work here in a matter of weeks. And I told him, well, that's crazy. I might be going on a road trip to kind of meet with an agency down there and in other markets and kind of see what a good fit is. And he said, well, I'm going to have an extra room. If you need to stay there for even, a week or even a month or whatever, it's not a big deal. Just let me know. Oh. And I was like, wow, thinking back to how Brian Reese first told me about New Mexico and first put that on the map. Yeah. Thinking to how Breaking Bad was filmed there, my favorite show of all time, and all the exciting things that were happening there. And then my friend gives me the situation to where, not forever, obviously, but I could actually move there and get my feet under me and not have to worry about rent right from go. I was like, this is just a sign that I have to do it. And so I just moved there. I had a couple people who had some connections with Carissa Mitchell's agency. And also the film commissioner of New Mexico, Ann Lerner, was a KU grad at the time as well. So I was like, yeah. I was like another crazy, I guess, connection that I already had there. And so I just kind of decided, all right, I'm moving to New Mexico, went there and then met with, Carissa. It was actually Tina Presley there at the time because it was Mitchell and Presley, but met with them and they signed me, and I just kind of started going from there. So it wasn't commuting so much. I just picked up and went, and then things kind of started to roll from there. And I kind of seen that a lot in my career. I don't know about you, but it seems like when we're kind of sort of committed and when we're really trying to take another step, but we're also trying to keep one foot where it's comfortable, then things kind of sort of happen maybe. But when we fully commit and make the move and make the investment, then things come back to you and things start moving,
I love that. Thanks for listening to the Hollywood Actor Podcast. If you enjoy this content, don't forget to subscribe, rate, review, and share.